You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series. My name is Andrew Mackay-Smith, and yes, that's a whole heap of rain going on around me at the moment. It is absolutely pouring in my part of the world. But the interview subjects that you've tuned in to here are from Denmark, yet another band from Denmark. This time around, you'll be hearing from the lads in Steelbourne, Benjamin Atlas Andreassen and Jacob Druedahl Bruun specifically. They're 2/3 of the outfit. The lads have released a new album. It's out now. It was released on the 30th of April 2021. I'm enjoying it. It's actually one of my albums of the year thus far, I've got to say. A Tale as Old as Time is the name of it. If you love traditional power metal in the vein of Hammerfall, Halloween, some Judas Priest, Maiden, but if you've also got a bit of a thing for extreme metal, you'll love these guys. But we talk all about it through the episode, as you will soon hear. Now, here's a couple of points I've got to raise. The first one is a big one. My audio is absolutely shit through this conversation. I was at my mother-in-law's house and I didn't bring along my microphone, so I had to use my AirPods, and they make it sound like as if I'm broadcasting from the end of a cave through an AM radio. Nothing I can do about it, unfortunately. Benjamin and Jacob's audio, though, is tip-top. So there you go. The other thing is it sounds like as though Benjamin and I have a bit of a false start. I do say to him, look, when the episode kicks off, blah, blah, blah. But we actually do exchange some high-quality banter for the first 5 minutes or so. So I thought I'd include it anyway. So it's not a mistake. I've done it on purpose. And let's get to it. Here they are. Benjamin Atlas Andreassen and Jacob Druedahl Bruun from the Danish outfit Steelbourne.
Hi, Andrew.
Benjamin, how's things?
Good, quite good. Just home office situation, but that's all the more excuse to talk some heavy metal instead.
Indeed. Have you still got COVID lockdowns in Denmark?
Partially, I have 2-3 days a week in the office, which is nice. I mean, just getting out is good. I feel like this the drive back and forth sort of clears your head, clears your mind, instead of just being in it for the full day. How about yourself?
Yeah, we've got a pretty psychopathic premier here, I guess you call him a governor, who as soon as there's one case, they tend to lock, or 3 cases. Last time I went in for a lockdown, it's just stupid because we're never going to get rid of COVID, and so people have to function. I think the Swedish model seems to be the way forward for everybody, and also New South Wales, the state just beneath us here, has a pretty good model. Also, not California, God, that's not the worst model. Texas and Florida seem to have the best models. You know, it's just nuts, mate. I mean, the issue for us as musicians, because I'm a musician as well, is that we can't perform live.
You're a bass player, no?
Correct.
Perfect.
See.
Perfect.
Yeah. Right there.
Yeah. We have it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We will have Jacob joining us as well. He's sometimes not the fastest technical person to join links and everything computer-ish, so he might be a few minutes late, but he's coming.
Sure, no worries. Yeah. No, I like your music, by the way. Before we get things kicked off, I find we'll talk about this when the other fella joins, but it's expertly recorded, man. I mean, it's crystal clear. I mean, I assume you've done this on I assume you've done this on a shoestring budget, because that's just how things have to get done these days. And you've probably done a lot of it yourself, but you've done it well.
It's essentially done here. Like, I have the X, the Dark Glass X7 pedal here into a Focusrite.
Yep.
Into the machine down here. That's essentially it, it's ridiculous, come to think of it, because we never expected to be able to, like, we invested quite a bit in home equipment just to be able to record, not record, but be able to write material and like send riffs back and forth to each other. Like we have a drive where we share riffs and such, and then I add the bass part, Jacob adds guitars, I go back in, I add strings or some backing vocals, and then so the whole album was written like that essentially, and it was just tracked at home, which is I think it's ridiculous that you can actually do that, but we were actually positively surprised in terms of not only how good you can make it sound, but how easy it was and how efficient it was. Because I mean we've recorded many albums previously, right? And the amount of money we've saved on this is absolutely insane. I think the last full length album we recorded, it set us back somewhere between 80 and 100,000 Danish kroner. What would that be?
I'm going to work that out.
Seven.
Yeah, currency.
Yeah. Just in studio time, right? And we, of course, we picked an excellent producer. It was Tommy Hansen. He did a lot of work for Halloween back in the day, and he was an excellent producer to work with, right? But he's an elderly man. He's been doing this for many years, and the cons of that was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay, gents, time to head home because I'm off the clock. And I was like, and even if you were like in the middle or you were just in the zone adding vocals or whatever, it was just because this was a job for him, and I completely respect that. And but it's hard to work with as a band when you've like set off a week to do a full-length album, and you're sort of trying to get in the zone, and then you're being thrown out. So having the option to join from home is and track from home is quite amazing.
Yeah, and Dark Glass too, because I use Sansan, which I find pretty good. But I've got the rack mounting for my live stuff. I don't do recording these days, but haven't Dark Glass produced some of the best equipment in the last 5 years? Like, it's fairly cheap to buy. In other words, it doesn't cost a fortune. And the sounds that you've produced on the album is a very good advertisement for Dark Glass, for the sound, and just the sound, yeah.
I mean, I've been looking for proper bass pedals for years. I've tried a lot of them, and none of them have cut it, because I tend to like if you get a very good gritty tone and then you just lose out on the low end, and there's nothing there. Where the beauty of the Dark Glass is this. I don't know how much into it you are, but where it splits the signal in two, right? And you can distort the low end, or you can leave the low end clean. And I think that's absolutely amazing to have that option. It's hands down the best overdrive distortion pedals I've ever come across.
How do you find it sounds when you play at full volume?
Honestly, I couldn't tell you, because I've never actually used it live. This is a recent discovery on my end. So I previously I've used Mad Professor. I've tried a few off. I've used some of the EBS pedals.
EBS, yeah.
And throughout most of our live shows, now we haven't played live with Steelbourne yet, but with our previous band, I've actually had just gone for a clean, like Steve Harris kind of sound, just completely new strings, a lot of treble, scoop mids, and not that much bass actually. So I'm looking forward to trying out the Dark Glass in a live setting, because we haven't done that yet. So I couldn't tell you actually.
Okay, I think we've got someone joining us now. Here we go.
Yeah. Hey,
Jacob. Hey, mate. How you going?
Hi.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're on board.
So we're on board. We've just been discussing bass pedals, Jacob, so you didn't miss out on much.
Okay. Sorry, I had a phone call I needed to take.
Oh, good. Well, we'll just keep on going then, because Ben, we've been having a pretty good conversation so far. So I won't do too much editing, because that was a pretty high quality conversation just then. But Jacob, I issued Ben a heartfelt compliment actually, because, and I do mean this, I don't just throw compliments out there because I feel like it. But great job with the tale as old as time. Okay, first and foremost, because I know it's not easy when you're musicians and you're doing things on your own dollar. And you've got the pressures and stresses of jobs and bloody bullshit COVID lockdowns and all of that sort of stuff. But you have put your hearts and souls into this, and it shows across the 7 cuts. For people listening, anybody that's a fan of epic, traditional heavy metal with a hard edge, and that's the devil in the detail actually with you guys, is that rather than just go for the Hammerfall, the Judas Priest and the Maiden, I can hear some Chuck Schuldiner in there too. So that's important to somebody like me, and I could even hear some of some blackened elements, such as the more recent Enslaved albums. I could hear coming across in what you guys are doing. So, what do you think of my comments? And do you want to add anything else?
No, I think you're right. I mean, I think the apparent influences are hard to disguise, right? We're all 3 of us are like huge Maiden fans, huge Priest fans, and then we are branching out in different directions. And I think Jacob is the most vigilant one of us, staying true to like a very specific era. And I think that is the heart of the songwriting in Steelbourne. And then you have Tolls and I who are trying to drag it in other directions, just to give it a little bit of spice of something else, something hard. I'm surprised that you say Enslaved, because I think I'm the only one who actually appreciates Enslaved in the constellation. But I can definitely agree with some of like the harder or a bit darker reference that you had. In my head, we're thinking like Candlemass. Stuff
really?
Like that,
okay.
trying to
nice.
a little bit. It might not be as evident, but at least trying to get down to some of the slower, more gritty, darker tone. But at the heart of it, it is very much Maiden and Priest. And then there's the production value of it, obviously, because we could have gone, as you said, the Hammerfall route and make it very polished, very pretty. And I think having a little bit of edge in the production definitely complements it quite well.
Jacob, your thoughts, mate?
Well, I agree with Benjamin in what he said, and of course, Maiden and Priest, and that is the main inspiration for the songwriting, and that's where I come from. And when Benjamin and Troels they put in their views on things from the darker side of metal, that gives that the edge that the music needs in order to be different from what you normally hear. And I appreciate the production as well. It's not what I had in mind when we started recording, but it works for the album as a whole, and I think it's pretty neat.
Is that right? Because that was the thing that I said to Ben, was that the production's sterling. Given the limitation of funds and that sort of stuff, because there's no such thing as labels, there's no advances, you've got to do everything yourself. But I'm curious actually here, because the production is very good, but it wasn't what you had in mind, Jacob. So what did you have in mind?
Well, my idea with the record was that it should be more polished, more Hammerfall-ish. I had a Hammerfall track as the reference track, and that was my idea of the sound of the record. And then we of course got into quite a big discussion of where we needed to go in production terms. And luckily, we had a friend of ours who could do the production for us, which had some views that differed quite from mine in order to what we needed to do to get this to be better.
If I can jump in, because originally the plan was to actually mix and master it ourselves, like because I don't know if this leads into any other questions you might have, but But starting out, Steelbourne, I mean, because Jacob Tolles and I, we played together in another band previously that fell apart last year, and then we got back together and we said, look, we want to finish this material that we have just left, and the main priority was to just get them recorded, get it mixed, and then if anyone wanted to listen to it, hey, that'd be cool. But first and foremost, we did it for ourselves. So with that in mind, the original plan was to actually just record it and then mix and master it ourselves. Then, as Jacob says, we had a friend who was just starting out as producer on his own, and he said, "Look, can I just have the raw tracks and see what I can do with it?" And it was there that we heard, because it was something else entirely. Like, and it's very interesting to hear the tracks and songs that you have written and recorded in a completely different setting, because that was what it was. Essentially, it was a lot harder, a lot more gritty than what we, at least from the demos. It was a big difference, right? And but it suited it. It was very, very complimentary to in hindsight. So we ended up saying, okay, that's fine. We'll focus on the next album, and you do the mixing and mastering, because this is absolutely amazing.
What about the release standards? So you've obviously got the MP3, which is what I received from Sora. But music like this, in my opinion, goes beautifully with vinyl and even cassette. A lot of those cult maniacs out there love this sort of music on cassette. So are you going down that route as well?
We will. Just building on starting out, there was no like full roadmap of do this. First of all, we just wanted to get the album out there. And because of the circumstances with COVID, we don't know exactly when we're able to start playing shows. And it wasn't when we recorded it, we weren't sure we would play shows. It has later evolved to, we're definitely going full ambition and playing shows again. So to begin with, it was just a digital release, but knowing that we will be playing shows, hopefully fall or winter at least. Then we will stock up on vinyl, CDs probably, T-shirts and all of that we can bring with us on the road. So it will be there.
How easy is it? I assume it's fairly straightforward because you're part of the European Union. But just in this COVID circumstances, have you put some feelers out to see how easy it is going to be? You know, the holy grail these days is Germany, or it has been for years. Germany, of course, you can play about 70 dates in Germany, can't you? So in terms of getting into other nations in Europe, is that going to be a simple process for you, or is it going to be a lot more complicated now?
The rules are always changing, right? Or the recommendations, I should say, are always changing. And honestly, I'm not sure about the most recent events. I can see that a lot of our friends from the Danish metal scene, they have started booking shows, mostly domestically. So it is slowly starting up, but most of them are like test festivals and test concerts, where it's like, I assume you would need a negative corona test from, and
probably
24 hours
vaccinated before. As well. That's the other thing.
Probably, yeah. But absolutely, Germany is a big country for us, and we hope to be able to go there. Now in the coming weeks, we hope to get some good reviews of it. We hope to sort of be able to ride that wave and then start booking the shows as circumstance allow it. So I'm sure we'll run into a whole bunch of surprises on that note. But right now I can't tell you, honestly.
Yeah, it's a tough one, mate. That's the problem, isn't it? The uncertainty. You can't book things. That's exactly what we talked about at the very top. You know, this bloody situation at the moment where music needs this music. It's fostered in the live environment. The album is important, but the live arena is actually when it comes to life, literally. That's our fight here. I keep talking about that on the podcast. And metal bands need to be able to tour, need to be able to play in front of people. So without that, and I've I've asked this question so many times in the last 12 months because it is important. That's the marketing and the social media side of things. Because with a release as strong as this, as a fan myself, the last thing I'd like to hear is that it doesn't do for you guys and reach the ears of impressionable listeners that would otherwise have heard it through the live arena. So you maybe have to step up the social media side of things, and that means spending money on Facebook and Instagram. So is that what the plan is?
I mean, through CERN, we've reached out to a couple of media platforms out there, and it's great to see that starting to come to fruition because there's a lot of noise and it's difficult to cut through. There are so many bands that are just, as you said, never heard because sure they can maybe gain a few audiences in live shows and stuff like that, but you have to be very, very good at this social media game, and we're not. I mean, we just want to play music. I don't want to sit and spend 2-3 hours a day trying to grow the Instagram follower base. I don't care, and I hate the fact that I need to do that just to get an audience, and especially in Denmark, it's difficult because there seems to be a different culture in the rest of Europe, and especially the Spanish-speaking countries are very, very open to new music compared to the Nordic countries, where it's sort of like, oh, okay, if there's not a positive review by someone I trust, then I don't care. And I'm guilty of it myself as well. We have a couple of other bands in Denmark that have recently released full-length albums, and it took me 2-3 months before I had like the surplus and the patience and the mood to sit down and put it on and make my own assessment of what I thought. And when I did, I thought it was brilliant. But you need to be in a specific mindset in order to want to do that. Where it seems as in some of the Southern European countries, it's like new music is welcomed and appreciated to a whole different degree, which I think is quite charming.
Same thing here in Australia, mate. People don't give bands a chance. If you go to any one of these festivals that are starting to spring up, you see, I love these bands, by the way, and I'm sure, Jacob, you do too. You know, Iron Maiden, Priest, Halloween, Candlemass. I've spoken to Leafy Edling from Candlemass. These bands are the icons, right? But for God's sakes, they've been around for about 50 years, some of these bands. They're approaching 50 years. And they're the music of my youth. I find it, as a 14-year-old, I was wearing Megadeth T-shirts. I see 14-year-olds around now wearing Megadeth T-shirts, and I was 14, well, you know, almost 30 years ago. You know, so it's getting people to give you guys a chance, isn't it? And to say, hang on a sec, there are some new sounds out there. And if you give these bands a chance, it will actually help foster the genre, rather than listening to Number of the Beast and Peace of Mind. As I said, I'm not shitting on Maiden at all, but it's a bit of a thing that I've got with young fans these days, to your point, that tend to sort of follow the leader and not invest some time listening to bands. That, and also too, you guys are up against Spotify. So you may end up on a playlist, but kids aren't looking at their screen, so they don't know it's you. So the song comes on and they go, oh, that's great. Okay, but now it moves on to the next one because everything's disposable at the moment. So yeah, there's no doubt you're up against it. And sorry, just to cap everything off, Ben, that point you make about not wanting to invest in social media, I get it. I don't either with my podcast and with other things. I've actually reached out to a consultant recently because I have to, because I'm writing books now, biographies. I'm writing soon, got to talk to him a little bit more, but Peter Sandoval from Morbid Angel, I'll be writing his biography fairly soon. And
cool.
It's got to be, we have to engage in the social media side of things in order to raise awareness. It's the only way to do it. But yeah, mate, that's the problem. Not being able to play live, you need to be able to do the social media side of things. So, but look, I'll change gears for a second. Let's focus on the album again. Lyrical themes, guys. What did you focus on?
Do you want to elaborate, Jacob?
No, you can take it. I think you can express it better than I can.
Ideally, we will want Troels here for this. He's the mastermind behind the lyrics. But in essence, we've taken sort of an observer's role to religion. Not necessarily bashing on religion or praising religion, but a sort of neutral ground in the middle, and looking at different historical events and how the history seems to repeat itself. Hence the title, A Tale as Old as Time. And I know that there are some hefty references in some of the tracks as well about this human need to fill a gap by believing in something. It doesn't necessarily have to be religion. It could be alcohol or drugs or whatever else you fill your void with. But this human instinct to believe and stand for something, and if that is taken away or appears to be a scam, then everything sort of falls apart. So the different tracks have a different thematic to it and a different time feeling to it, and we've, at least in some of the tracks, we've gone for very, very, at least the Requiem, the sixth track on the album. There's like heavy cathedral vibes in the beginning, sort of trying to recreate this preaching session, and yeah, it's a, I wouldn't say touchy subject, but it's just it's interesting to see how people interpret it in their own words, because as I said, we're not like forcing people to hear a certain, it's not a rebellious album in the sense that we want, screw religion or anything like that, but I'm very curious to hear what people think when they listen and they make their own assessment, because I would understand if you would label us as a Christian metal band based on some of the references we have. So I just hearing it on a playlist, as you said, like, oh, that's one of those Christian bands. They're singing about dear God and stuff like that. But that's sort of where we are right now. I wouldn't say it's a concept album. It sort of started out as a concept album, and then it branched out a little bit. We didn't want to do like a full-on Arian or a Devin Townsend concept album in that sense, but we hope that you can see the silver lining and the red thread in the tracks, and also the order of the tracks.
Yeah, talk to me about that, the order of the tracks. So you've obviously stacked them to tell a story. So in a way, that's similar to a concept album?
Yeah, you could say, but also just writing the dynamics of the different tracks. I mean, you have some of the faster paced, more aggressive tracks, such as Defiler would probably be Defiler and Dear God, and the opener by way of the Serpent being probably the faster, harder tracks, and then sort of give the listeners some breathing room here and there. It's the first time we used strings, actually, for like, we never really had string sections before, and before that I'm referring to previous band, but where we also think it's a good way of complementing not only the lyrics and trying to underline some of this Christian or religious undertones that are in there, but also just to emphasize the dynamic and guide the listener in that sense. But each track, just to return to your original question, each track sort of has its own thematic or event that it builds from. So there's not like a start and a finish in terms of story, where sort of the lyrics from track 3 leads into track 4. There's nothing like that, but so each of them had their own story and their own universe that they operated from. When we did like initial sketching for the artwork as well, we considered like having what's the word for that, like mosaic almost of different scenarios. Wow. Just to underline that part of it being individual stories with individual historical events in them. I think that's we ended up not going that route just because we wanted to give a more dynamic and more interpretive album where people could make their own decisions. And yeah, I'm happy with the order of things now. I know Jacob is as well. So yeah, but as you said, like, people listen a lot through playlists, right? I hope that people sit down and hear the full album from start to finish, as at least the three of us often do with albums, and I think that's the correct way of the correct way. That's such a dumb thing to say, but that's
I know
that's
your
the way
point,
I do. Yeah.
No, I understand your point. I mean, an album like this, you get a 6-pack of beer, you sit down, or you smoke a joint or something, and you put on the lava lamp and you just soak it up. That's the way to do it. And it's a good, and for me, I mean, God, you know, you do that sort of stuff, and then you put the football on, the rugby for me here, and you got the music playing in the background, and you're chilling, man. It's a very good Friday night, man, especially for me these days doing that. And I hope people out there do that with what you guys have got here. But just focusing on the lyrical things again. I remember speaking to Shriegel Glansman from Helvetii about this, because they go into some of that Celtic mythology. And of course, you know, you guys being from Denmark, it's the Norse thing as well. In terms of, that's the perception that I certainly have. So correct me if it's not. But you guys, I spoke to Danny about this too from Vansin, but there's this fucking movement at the moment to go after bands who are talking about things to do with Scandinavia, and they're like calling you guys racist and all this bullshit. You know, the idiots that I'm talking about, the fuckwits on Twitter. Did you feel any pressure to avoid subjects that may attract the attention of these morons, or do you just not give a shit?
No, not really. It was never in our consideration. I get what you mean. Like, if you go with a full-on I'm on a Math Viking Crusade thematic, sure, that can be interpreted in the wrong way. But I mean, people have done it to great success as well, just building on the old school stereotypical Manowar. Look at the what's their name? Eternal Champion, the newest album.
Oh yeah, good band.
Armor of Fire, which is a fantastic album, and the artwork for that is just, it's up there, right? You could easily make some assumptions. But honestly, no, it was not in our consideration. I don't know if it's been blown out of proportion in international media, if that's the case. But at least here, sure, we see signs of it here and there, and there's also a lot of talk lately about, like, women being excluded from metal bands and stuff like that. Oh, we'll drop him. But no, it was not a big consideration for us.
No, that's fair enough, man. Yeah, that sort of stuff annoys the hell out of me. If you heard what I was talking about with Danny, it's just people virtue signaling and trying to game the system and try to prove that they've got good intentions, or they have anything but. Okay, and there have been some bands that have done absolutely nothing wrong, like Okoye Jones out of Bolzer, I've spoken to Okoye, wonderful guy. He's a Kiwi, actually, so he's just across the ditch from us here. Still got his Kiwi accent, but his father's visibly African or African descent, but he has he's got the tattoos, which apparently the Norse tattoos, and like, he's been accused of it. And I did speak to him about it. That was a couple of years ago, and I could see how much it had affected him. He didn't want to go. He was happy to talk to me about it, and he was happy for the podcast. But in terms of going on the record and talking to, you know, the pitchforks and the Vices, Noisies, and all of those things, and the Twitter assholes, it's just a way, I think, of these people who have no understanding of the history of heavy metal and the link back. It'd be like me. I mean, even this is a sensitive subject, but a lot of Australian bands, of course, we've got Australian Indigenous Aboriginal culture. We could draw from that. But me being of Anglo-Celtic extraction, if I decided to sing about any of those great myths and legends of the Dreamtime, it would be called cultural appropriation, of course. So there's literally no way you could win. You can't lift up through subject matter. And the other thing is there's this wonderful subject matter that is yet to be mined, but for completely obvious reasons it can't be touched, and that's a lot of the Islamic stuff, because there were massive Islamic incursions into Europe, massive Islamic incursions, you know, and these are subjects, and there's historical records of wars and battles that have been fought, and especially with the lyrical prose that I think you're bringing to things, and just thinking about it from an observer's perspective, not even offering an opinion. And I think hopefully once we get over all this woke culture bullshit, we can do that, I think, as a society. But mate, I just can't see us getting out of it any time soon, unfortunately. But I also do have hope, because I think metal fans, and I mean this, are by and large rather intelligent people and can see through that sort of stuff. That's certainly been my experience talking to the musicians such as yourself, and then also interacting with fans who reach out to me online as well. I've never had anybody reach out to me online that's had anything but very nice things to say, constructive feedback, if you want to call it that. So I do have faith and hope, mate, that as a metal genre, mate, that we might be amongst the first in terms of cultural artifacts to move out of that shit and go, we're not putting up with this shit anymore. We're going to defend our own.
But it's sure the topic is new to some extent, right? But there have been issues like this always. A couple of years back, I had the privilege of touring with Christian, the Brazilian death metal band.
Christian, brilliant band, yeah.
Fantastic band, fantastic guys as well. We were, I think, almost 2 weeks with them, and they told some stories. I mean, they're a bit older than we are, right? And they had been around for a lot longer, and they told some stories about like touring in Germany, Poland, Italy with like early 90s, late 80s, with skinheads standing outside the clubs waiting to beat up the long-haired hippies listening to metal inside, right? They were just like systematically waiting outside, and then when people emerged from the clubs, there would just be mass fights. And they had put up with that for many years, and they had some insane stories about that. Definitely, if you're talking to Christian at some point, ask into that part, because they had some really insane stories. I don't want to go in too much into it here, but amazing guys, amazing band. We had a blast with them.
Yeah, I saw them in 2008 in Brisbane, and holy shit, man, they were just probably, along with Eric, the master blaster himself, Eric Rutan from Hate Eternal, the two most intense bands I've ever seen live are Hate Eternal and Christian. Christian were just non-stop from the beginning to the very end, just windmills of hair, a bit like Eric and Hate Eternal. And I couldn't believe, especially as a bassist, just how intense their performance was. And those skinhead assholes that are looking to beat up some of those metal guys, I'd like to see them go, those guys in Christian, man. Those guys in Christian, those hardcore Brazilian nuts, mate, they beat the shit out of them. Yeah, one of my best friends is Brazilian, actually, mate. You don't want to fuck around. These idiots were heated, mate.
They were from São Paulo, all three. The three brothers, actually.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. Yeah, brilliant band. Yeah. So I don't think Jacob's coming back, actually. He might have just dropped off.
He just texted me, actually, saying his phone died. I don't know if that means he's on his way back, or we'll take it as a positive surprise if he comes back.
We'll just keep forging forward. All good. All right. So gosh, I'm looking for my words here and they're not coming out. God, I'll start again. Okay. If you were going to tell somebody who has yet to hear your music to listen to a single track, which one would you pick?
It depends on the person, I think. If it's like someone who I know is not a fan of this kind of music generally, I would probably, at least Jacob and I, to us, the big one is A Tale as Old as Time, the title track.
Yeah.
Because to me, it has everything. It has the quiet intro parts. It's a very dynamic track, and then after the quiet part in the middle, going over to the guitar solo madness. I think that one has it all to me. But it's a very long track. So if you wanted to give people more of a "This Is Us," I would probably throw By Way of the Serpent. It's like short and sweet. This is us. This is what we sound like. Closely tied in with Defiler, I think. Third track. But it's a difficult question, and we had that discussion when we were planning single releases, because it was like, okay, we need to tell our story in a very short amount of time. And even though we think A Tale as Old as Time is the strongest, I know Tolls won't agree with this. So I mean, each to their own, right? But yeah, By Way of the Serpent would probably be the short answer, closely tied with Defiler.
Yeah, good choices.
But Defiler has this very theatrical chorus as well. I think it's a love-hate song. Either you love the chorus on that track, or you hate it. It's too much. It's too theatrical. It's too pompous for you. And then with the spoken word thing leading into the solo, again, that's also if you're into like the priest theatrical scene, or I think you would appreciate it. But I know it's not for everyone.
So 7 tracks. I'm willing to gamble the chair that I'm sitting on that you had much more tracks written, and you chose, if not the best tracks, just the tracks that you think worked. So you've probably got a follow-up release ready to go, have you? And certainly in terms of songs and arrangements put together.
Are you back, Jacob?
Yes, I'm back now. My phone lost power, sadly.
Well, good, mate. Good to have you back.
You can put that one more precise than I can.
Well, we had some tracks that didn't make the album, but we didn't have a lot of them, actually. But for coming albums, we have some now that we're working on. We don't have to full album yet, but we have some tracks that we hope can be recorded late this year, starting next year perhaps, so that we can follow up in spring next year with album number 2.
Yeah.
We have and we have like a huge back catalog of riffs or intros, or like we have a lot of ideas that just never made it into a track previously, where we just recorded this is a riff, or this is a drum track, or so there are a lot of ideas to work with, and now with it being done remotely, because we can't meet in a rehearsal room once a week or twice a week, then you're sort of forced to do it that way. But it's I think it's nice.
Yes, and there's also the fact that if we select tracks not to go on this album, then we sort of selected them as being not good enough to see the world.
All right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then we would rather do new stuff than pick off things that we sort of threw in the bin earlier.
So I call it the musical parts bin. You got these great riffs, but you haven't quite worked out a full arrangement for them yet. But you've got you're not. So that was an issue that I've got with Metallica, actually. They seem to release every bloody thing that they've got, and most of their stuff since about 1988 probably shouldn't have been out there. It's just not fully thought through. I know Lars is one of your fellow countrymen, but he's chiefly responsible, I think, for a lot of that, because he takes care of a lot of the arrangements. But hey, I've been meaning to ask guys from Denmark this one. I didn't ask Danny this, but is Lars considered a national icon? Is he one of the more famous Danes to Danish people?
I would say no.
Go ahead, Jack.
But that's maybe just my opinion.
Oh, you're being too nice, I think. Yeah, I couldn't imagine anybody wanting to claim him too heavily. I know. Look, I've heard through the grapevine, through people that have actually done business with him and had to spend time around him, that the public persona is a little bit different to the private persona. But then on the other side, I've spoken to people that have met him and haven't been impressed as well. I've heard things like he's the sort of guy that if he's shaking your hand, he's looking over your shoulder to see who else is in the room. And I, for one, can't stand shit like that. But look, he's been responsible for powering Metallica, and it is him. I think it's his business acumen to becoming, in my opinion, bigger than the Rolling Stones, probably second to the Beatles in terms of the biggest band of all time. So yeah, I mean, he's a famous Dane, and he's on stage there. It'd be nice for him to sort of give a Danish band like you guys a bit of a cosign, though.
That would be nice.
Yeah. That would be that would be nice. I mean, you had I saw Metallica in I think that was 2007 when they played here locally, actually, and at that time you had I remember supporting them was Volbeat
Oh yeah.
and Nemec. And it was shortly after that where Metallica just said, "Hey, Volbeat, we love what you do. Come with us on tour." And I thought that was an amazing gesture. And if it hadn't, now you can say all you want about Volbeat. I'm not gonna state my opinion here, but the impact it had on their career, that Metallica sort of took them under their wing and brought them along for a full tour. I find it hard to believe they would have been as big as they are now. If it hadn't been for Metallica. So there was a bit of a gesture there, which I can appreciate. Say what you will about the music, but I think that was a good story.
Yeah, Volbeat, Five Finger Death Punch, Disturbed. My view on all of that is, look, it's rock music. It's heavy sounding rock music. More power to it. It's definitely not my stuff. Your stuff is more my thing, as you know, if you listen to some of my other podcast episodes. I'm far more into the extreme metal. But look, if Volbeat, the opportunity there, though, for Volbeat then to do what Metallica did for them to someone like you guys, to bring you guys out, even for 2 or 3 shows. And I know it's hard to do that. I get the production side of it, and the contracts and the arrangements are very difficult. I understand that, but that's the opportunity. And I think those big bands, they need to do that stuff, man. They do. They do owe it to the fans to actually go, hey, we heard these guys. They're a bloody good band. We're going to give them an opportunity to play 7 or 8 songs before, like third band on the bill, that sort of thing. Because, you get a Trivium or somebody like that, one of those big American bands that always supports the Volbeat, or maybe, not always, but, typically that's the scenario. But I think that's the opportunity. But, I mean, the perspective that Jamie Jasta has from Hatebreed on his podcast, he talks about high tide raising all ships, is his famous saying. And he's right. He's right. So the more bands like Volbeat that get bigger, the more opportunity there is, I think, for you guys, because it drags in some of these 11 and 12 and 13-year-olds that aren't attuned to metal yet, but they need that soft entry in through the Volbeats and through the Disturbed, and then they find you guys.
I think you're right, and I think there's some sort of responsibility there. I don't know if that's the right word, but coming back to what we talked about previously with like having someone validate the music for you, at least in the Nordic speaking countries where people are maybe more hesitant to explore new stuff, then it would be such a big help for upcoming bands and the industry as a whole to be more inclusive in that sense, and because if you play, say you play death metal and you're a Danish band, you play death metal, you are going to be compared to The Burning, to Ill Disposed, to all these hate sphere Danish bands from like the 90s, where a lot of people in their head, this was the prime time of Danish metal music. And no matter what you do, you're going to get compared to those bands, and people are going to say, "Oh, it's good, but it's not Ill Disposed or it's not Hate Sphere," and that's fine. That's their opinion, right? But to some extent, it would be so good to have someone with authority in the scene, be it a reviewer or another band, saying, "Hey, look, we can stand fully behind this. This is the new face of Danish death metal." If that's the case, right? That would be amazing. And you have signs, at least a lot of international bands where like insisting on having a local support. We had the pleasure of supporting Dragon Force a couple of years back here, and super nice guys, and they're like insisted on having a local support band. I think that was great. In Flames a few years before that, like there's so there, it's very, very nice to have those kinds of bands. I know Machine had actually done it. That wasn't us, but we know them quite well. Another band here, where Whereas like the venue had gotten the responsibility of picking something suitable for the main attraction, right? And I think that's a very, very charming thing to do instead of bringing your own support along. So it's a fine line, right, of having, if you have one or two supports, then insisting on one of them being local, and then you can bring the other support band with you. That would be a fantastic way of giving some attention to new bands.
Yeah, I totally agree with that strategy. It's something that we have spoken about that before. That's something that seriously big bands, and when we talk about responsibility, that's how they can be responsible. By all means, bring the internationally renowned support band, like when Metallica came, they brought Lamb of God. But Baroness are a great band too, but they had Baroness on the third bill when they were last out here. So they had Baroness, Lamb of God, and Metallica. Now, in my opinion, to be honest, Baroness are the best band amongst all three, and I certainly enjoyed them the most. Nothing against the other two at all, but it's just down to personal preference. But it would have been nice to see a local band, because God knows there are enough. Australia at the moment, there's a lot of metalcore and deathcore bands. There's not really a lot of bands like what you guys are doing. It's mainly metalcore, deathcore, and a lot of thrash as well. But still, you give these bands an opportunity. But here's a question for you about you guys. Okay, so you got to be a metal fan to become a metal musician. So how did you guys meet? Is it the old thing where you guys knew each other at school or at university and decided to hook up, or was it the bloody ads on the internet where drummer wanted and guitarist wanted?
Yeah, I can start and you can fill in, Jacob. I was 17, I think, 18 maybe. I had played guitars for a bunch of years, and we had this party band. We played like cover songs for university parties and stuff, and we were playing a show at a faculty, and when you overhear a conversation and you overhear a very specific part of it, and it's like almost godsend right then and there, where I don't know what the guys were talking about at all, but I overheard one specific sentence, and it was, "Hey, have you seen the long-haired guy in the Iron Maiden t-shirt looking for a bass player for his power metal band?" And I was like, I need to find this guy, because the week before I had bought a bass. I didn't know how to play it yet, but I had bought a bass, and I found the long-haired guy in the Iron Maiden t-shirt, and now we're doing an interview together on an Australian podcast, which I think is amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a killer. Yeah, I know. I thought it might have been one of those things where you were, going grocery shopping and you overheard someone talking about Celtic Frost or something like that. Because I know that's what I do. Sometimes you hear that and you're like, you and me, we're alike. We understand each other. We don't know each other, but we understand each other.
Yeah. I mean, I was listening to a lot of Manowar, a lot of Hammerfall, a lot of folk metal back then as well, like Elevate and Equilibrium, stuff like that. And that was like my late teen years. But obviously also the classic, especially Iron Maiden, not so much Judas Priest at that time. And Jacob was, he was a few years older than me. Well, you still are technically, but had played more shows than I had, and we sort of got talking. And Jacob, you already had a band at that point as well.
Yeah, I did. And the way the rest of us met at that point, or the third of us now, he was the singer of our former band as well. As we do in Denmark, we write some posts on different social media and stuff like that, and then people respond. And he responded to one of those. It's like what you did back in the days, where you hang up some papers at the grocery market or something like that.
Yep.
So that was pretty standard.
Yes, I remember those days well before the internet, looking through the local newspaper, musicians wanted section, meeting tens of musicians until you. The irony for me is that I've never played metal before. Played close to it, new metal, but never actually played what you guys are doing. I just found being a bassist, that back in those days, if you played anything more than just hung on the B string, if it's a 5 string, or an E string, if it's a 4 string, you didn't get a gig. And they literally just, I was just like, why do you guys even want a bass player in a metal band? I tried to join a couple of death metal bands, but I was trying to do stuff more similar to like Alex Webster does or what have you, because it's fun. You're trying to fill it up with notes, and you think, well, this is the music to do it in, but you know, but I found that we just want you to play with a pick, which I don't play with a pick. I play with the fingers because I'm not saying I can't play with a pick, but I'm not as good. It doesn't make as much sense to me because it's just the way that I've grown playing the bass. But I play a lot of funk and disco music as a consequence these days. So it's very much the opposite, but it's just a lot of fun. But I think you earn your stripes as a metal musician, meeting people through the classifieds or through these ads that you put in the grocery store, and meeting all these weirdos that say that they can play an instrument, then you give them an instrument and they can't play. You're like, well, why did you say you could play an instrument?
Yeah, we had a couple of those.
we did.
We had a couple of those. Yeah, but it's really, really nice now to having played together for so long. Jacob Tolles and I would play together for 10, 11, 12 years. And transitioning from being a five-member band to now being 3. And having played together for so long, we sort of know what each other appreciate, and we sort of know, like, if Jacob sends a riff and I add a bass line to it, I can already tell before I send it back to him whether he'll like it or not. And it's a fine balance, because sometimes I just do what he wants, but other times it's good for all 3 of us to push him a little bit and saying, I know you're going to hate this, but just give it a chance, and it might be too much, but let's try. And I think that we need that as well. You can't just grow stagnant because you know one another so well, so you just do the same thing over and over again. That way you'll never develop, so to speak. And now you said I also play with my fingers as well, and when Jacob sent the first couple of riffs for this album, I was like, holy fuck, wow, how am I ever going to play this? Because Jacob had recorded the drums, and they were fast on some of the tracks. At least if you listen to something like the chorus in Inferno, those triplet drums are killer. And I was like, how am I ever going to do this with my fingers? It was quite a fun process of trying to sit down and trying to develop a new technique for yourself, so you can actually keep up with this new drum. And I haven't been like pressured in that sense in a few years. So that was definitely a moment where it's like, okay, you have to sit down, you have to practice X amounts of hours a day. You can't just do what you always do. And I think it's amazing to be able to push each other like that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, sometimes when you're particularly when you're faced with very fast drums as a bassist, it's one of those things you think, how the hell am I ever going to get over this and actually put something which locks down the groove? But yeah, to your point, it just comes back down to practice or study. I call it study. Studying the music and actually just figuring out where you can make it musical. Like I'd spoken to Steve DiGiorgio about this sort of stuff, because he's just bass iconoclast. He's the guy. Right?
He's a big inspiration to me, just for the record. But
yeah. Well, he's a damn good guy as well, I've got to say. Just a very humble, down-to-earth guy. And I listened to the work that he did on Control the Night. And I just said to him, I don't, that's his masterwork as far as I'm concerned, because it's totally non-intuitive, but absolutely musical at the same time. And you need those high watermarks to use that expression again about water, but it's tides and stuff. You need that aspirational figure, don't you, who's pushed it to its outer limits to prove that you can be musical, the bass can be heard. So when you guys have played live before, though, haven't you? Maybe not in this group here, in this setup, but you clearly played live together before. So is it very intuitive between the pair of you on stage?
Yeah, I would say so. How many shows have we played, Jacob?
Together?
Yeah.
50, 70, I think.
I think more.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, you can tell with how cohesive the album sounds. You haven't phoned it in. You've locked it down properly, and you only do that when you understand each other, or you're a true session guns.
Yeah. Yeah, we played a lot of shows together, and we had like different phases. At some point, we wanted to do it more choreographed, actually more of a
Choreographed,
planned.
yeah, I know what you're saying, yeah.
Choreographed. Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. Whereas now it falls more natural. Now, obviously, it's been a while since we played together live. I can't remember. The last show I think was November, year and a half ago, something like that.
Mm.
Yeah.
The final show with the Savage Machine that we had before. And now I'm super keen on getting back out there, and especially with this new material. I think it's, you always think the newest stuff is the best, right? But this time I actually mean it. This is the best that we've done.
Savage Machine, man. That sounds like a Dio reference, doesn't it? Like Dio,
I think you could find a bunch of Dio references in there.
Nice, yeah.
I just wanted to add one comment, if I may,
Sure.
Andrew, on because you talked about like aspirations. There was a guy that came to my attention not long ago, but Jared Smith from Archspire.
Oh yeah.
Like this. I know it's something else entirely to us, but I mean, just the freedom of seeing that man play, and how he is doing his own thing, but it fits in with the guitars and the drum that's already very busy. It's a wall of sound, right? But he's I believe he was a classical guitarist before he turned bass player, and it's just, you can definitely hear that in the way he's played. He's so free on the fretboard, and like it's very musical at the same time. That is just savage, just brutal. And I think looking to people like that, even though what he's doing is not directly applicable when you play classic heavy metal like we do, but taking little bits and pieces here and there of like, okay, he's actually doing some very, very impressive and melodic stuff at the same time. I think that's very, 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 very beneficial when you want to grow as a musician.
Yeah, I know he's saying that Archspire. I can't remember the drummer's name now, but I've spoken to the drummer, and I think I just said, I don't really understand how you guys do what you do, because it's beyond the limits of what most people can probably comprehend. And at first listen, it doesn't so much sound like noise. It just sounds like it's almost computer generated or something like that. And to your point, to have a musical bass player amongst that setup, I'm just amazed, mate, as a metal fan from the 90s, when I was a young fella, at just the way these musicians are pushing the outer limits of this music. They're doing things that you just did not ever think were possible. And it's such a joy to hear. It's such a joy to hear that the key word innovation that's happening in heavy metal.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
absolutely.
Do you guys get a lot of feedback from us in Australia? Have you had any people sort of reach out to you that have listened to your music?
I mean, we only low key release this, right? The official release is tomorrow.
Yeah.
So we had a YouTube channel pre-release it yesterday with like new wave of traditional heavy metal full albums, and we've sort of been since it went pre-premiered yesterday. The feedback has been amazing. Like I was blown away. Just going through YouTube comments and just activity on our website as well. It's amazing to hear. But from Australia, no, not so far. It seems to be no, not yet. But I hope we will, especially after this as well. I really encourage people to give it a spin.
I'd love to help you out. The problem I've got is that less than 10% of my audience is based in Australia. It's just the way it evolves. Yeah, it's pretty emblematic of a global metal audience, if you like. So about 55% is in the United States. The rest is made up of a combination of Europe and South America. Lots of people from your part of the world, Denmark, particularly after good old Danny, the conversation with him from Vansind. It just went boom. He must be very well connected or something, or he's been very nice and shared it all to his friends or something. Because I've had messages and I've had a lot of very nice things come back from Denmark actually, which has just been wonderful to see, because I've long regarded Denmark as a metal high water. You know, it's a place that's very important for heavy metal. I think, you know, Lars does come from Denmark, as we've already discussed, but Artillery is the other band I think are incredibly underrated. Massively, as important as far as I'm concerned on the impact on musicians as a Destruction or a Sodom or a Tankard.
Yeah, we played with Artillery before as well. I think twice, Jacob. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, twice or thrice, I think.
Yeah. Very nice guys.
Yeah, he's done a lot for Australian bands too. Sorry, yeah, Michael's taken the Australian bands out across Europe. Yeah.
And Artillery is also a prime example of one of those bands that have had a big impact on the Danish metal scene in general, and then now they also insist on playing with younger local bands, which I think is amazing. So whenever you see Artillery, there's always a local support there. I think that's a charming feat. So a lot of people here have played with Artillery, and that's good. It's for the better, because they're definitely the seasoned veterans here, right? You can tell both on stage and off stage when you speak to them, and very nice guys.
Yeah, I've only ever heard very nice things from people in Australia about Michael, and from Danny as well, because he played in Artillery for a bit. So yeah, you want that, mate. You just want the elder statesmen out there, because it's not always like that. Particularly with some of the bigger bands that don't give a shit about the younger bands and the emerging bands that are coming through. I have heard some stories, like you're saying, some opinions aren't worth expressing, but some people just have bad days, weeks, months and years. I get that. There's no dramas there, but it's always nice when you when you hear nice stories like what I keep on hearing about Michael.
Yeah.
Lads, I'll wrap things up, but before I let you go, the release is tomorrow. Okay, so I did see that. Now, for people listening, because I'll try and get this out tonight, for people listening, where can they go? Can you direct them to where they can go to support you guys if you've got physical copy out there, all of that sort of stuff?
We have our Facebook page where we will keep everyone updated. Primarily, we have our website as well, but Facebook is probably the easiest place. And then we are currently setting up a Bandcamp we have been encouraged to do so, to set up a Bandcamp so people can actually purchase, because and right now there's no physical stuff to buy, but I mean, if enough people want to, then of course we'll have to set that in motion. Currently we're just blown away by the positive feedback on this, so we didn't know what to expect, really. So it's we're definitely looking into physical music, CDs and vinyl, and maybe even cassette, if your assumptions are right there. So I think Facebook is a good place to start, and then we'll keep people updated from there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the Bandcamp thing's a bloody good idea, I think, because look, physical copy, it's just the way metal fans seem to identify. I don't, to be honest with you. I've bought cassettes here and there. I much prefer the convenience of these things, but I do listen to the albums. But no, that's killer. You got a good Facebook page. The website's killer too. I mean, you've got it all going on. Maybe on the next, you've got enough songs there for another album to do another album when you guys have got the energy to go through after this cycle here. Maybe that's the time to do it. But for now, people listening, you can go to the Facebook page, and it's pretty easy to find you too, by the way, Steelbourne. There's another band, I think from Melbourne, of all places, just down the road from me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it doesn't have an E on the end. It's been like, I don't know why they've done it like that. I think that, but you can't get you guys confused, put it that way. They don't have the same profile that you guys have got. So it's very easy to find you. Definitely check this album out if you love your traditional heavy metal with a harder edge, I like to say you guys have got. That's the thing that separates you guys from the rest of the pack. So both of you, look, congratulations on the Sterling affair. I just look forward to seeing what you guys do in the future, man. I think it's all ahead of you.
So do we.
Thank you.
No worries, guys.
Fantastic.
All right, thanks very much.
You've been listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series that syndicates for the A-List Online. My name is Andrew Mackay-Smith. You just heard from the lads in Danish outfit Steelbourne, specifically Benjamin Atlas Andreassen and Jacob Druedahl Bruun. Thanks so much for tuning in.